Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the School of Self-Worth. I'm your host, Nicole Song. Today's episode digs into the heart of grit and resilience and really rising above to own your own journey. My guest is Samantha Lee. I met her at an event in Seattle, and I was so moved by her story that I wanted to have her join us here on the show. Samantha is a Vietnamese American refugee, and she came to the United States and really overcame so many obstacles to now be named 40 under 40 by the Puget Sound Business Journal in Seattle. She is the CEO and president of the Seattle Southside Chamber of Commerce, and she is so passionate about supporting local businesses and is the daughter of entrepreneurs as well. Her story is so inspiring, and you don't want to miss her simple tips on how to handle things when other people start to judge or get envious of your success. So, before we get started, if you are an Asian American corporate leader wanting to step into greater visibility, grab the Asian Visibility System to get the exact step by step to become the go to strategic leader at work. It's linked down below in the show notes. Okay, friends, let's dive in. Samantha, thank you so much for being here on the School of Self-Worth. I'm so thrilled to have you join us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
It's so fun. I love the different ways I encounter guests and folks. And I met Samantha at an event locally in Seattle where she spoke, and you just spoke in such a deep, heartfelt way about your own life experience and the challenges that you have, that I was like, I really want her on the podcast. She's just going to be such a great voice for anybody out there who, encounters challenges when you really follow your dream and your path and your desires, because that's really what I got from that conversation that I saw you speak at. And so, really we're here to talk about self-worth is always the foundational thematic part of the conversations. And so what I would love, Samantha, is if you could actually start by telling us a little bit about your own journey to where you are now today and how self-worth played into that.
Yeah, certainly. So I am a Vietnamese refugee. My family came here in the early 90s, and we grew roots here in South Seattle. And I watched my parents go from, you know, um, trying to find, their footing, trying to find a sense of stability for the family. And they did that through, they were able to accomplish that through entrepreneurship. And so my mom owned a nail salon. My dad was, a gardener. And I was kind of like their baby business manager because I was going through school. I was able to learn English, come home, teach my parents the English that I was learning. And I became a sort of navigator for them, interpreting documents and information, talking to vendors, talking to even customers, potential customers, putting together marketing materials. And I remember running through neighborhoods and just flyering for my dad's landscaping business. It was really, really fun summers and evenings and weekends to really help him grow that. And I was, I found myself in high school trying to identify what I wanted to be. Of course, as a refugee, your parents want you to be like a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer. I didn't like robotics or robots, so I didn't want to be an engineer. I I get very squeamish around bodily fluids, and so I did not want to be a doctor. And a lawyer, I just don't like arguing with people. So
Yeah.
all of that was out of the question for me. And so I was just kind of floundering for a little bit, trying to figure out what to do. And I just remember, that K through 12 track, they teach you so heavily on go to college and you'll find success. Go to college and you'll find it. But I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I did not grow up with a lot of resources. I didn't have aunts and uncles that worked in various, in like a nonprofit world or, was in aerospace or anything like that. So I didn't have, that kind of family connection. There wasn't a deep bench of resources for me. So I was going to look at maybe just continuing to support my parents and their business. And then one day, an adult came to my school, did a presentation, shared that there was this opportunity to enter into a program that would connect me to mentors and workshops that would really help me with my professional growth, and it gave me a scholarship and stipend to go to college. I thought, well, why not? Let's see what this is all about. I literally had nothing to lose, so I applied, and I was, one of 30 students that was selected to enter that program, and that program completely changed my life. I was then connected with a pool of mentors, a a wide network of subject matter experts that really helped me get access to resources and insights that I would have never had. Just by just the nature of where I came from, um, and that really helped me, you know, navigate the landscape ahead of me to then go to college. By the time I was 22, I had my MBA, and I didn't take education as, I certainly saw it as a privilege and kind of my way out of poverty, and to then extend that and help my family, go from that surviving to thriving threshold. And I started off, after college, I was um, a, you know, I worked in customer service, and I got really interested in learning kind of like how the sausage was made at the manufacturing company that I was working at. Um, from that point to when I started to getting promoted to a senior leadership role, it was 8 months in between. So it was really fast growth. And from there to becoming a C-suite executive, the vice president at our chamber here, was 6 years, and then 2 years after that, I became the CEO. So it's been it's been fast and furious, to say the least, in growth. But my self-worth came from just learning how important access to information and mentors, and just having a wide network, a deep network. It really allowed me to gain insights that my parents lacked, and because they just were um, they didn't have those experiences, those life experiences to help me. This program really took you know uh, really took me from surviving every single day, not knowing what I wanted to be, to getting to where I am today. And now I'm able to create programs, just like the program that helped me, to help the community, that essentially raised me. So
What a beautiful story. So I have many questions around all of these pieces. What would you say in terms of, like you said, you had access to all of these mentors? How do you feel like that helped you? Like, and did it help you to have, did you have Asian American mentors in there or not? And then how did that sort of help you, skyrocket, was what it sounds like in terms of the work to get to CEO? And what did they do exactly? Like, what was happening in those relationships?
yeah, my first mentor was a Hispanic man who had lived experiences as a refugee, so he understood the unique struggles that and barriers that I was facing. um, he understood that trust was a big thing, and so it wasn't just automatically given. And so he was able to kind of slow down and talk to my parents to get them to understand the importance of allowing me to take a week away from the home, and go to a summer camp that the program was putting on. He helped. It was really important that he had some um, some experience in working with Asian American families. Um, the community that I grew up in, I went to high school in Kent, and there's a lot of Asian American, community members there. And the students, there were a lot of students from Southeast Asia. Um, and, his office was right there, and he was able to just talk to us differently. It wasn't this cookie cutter. He really met us where we were, um, and understood that many of us, we were juniors and seniors in high school, but we were working, and some of us, really did bring home, a significant income to help contribute to the families that we were in. And so he understood that, if I was not able to make it to a mentoring meeting, that, he didn't make me feel shameful for any of that. And it was really, really kind, and extended a lot of empathy. In college, I had a woman who, she was not Asian American, but was just, having a strong, empowering woman, female presence, to really help me kind of like hone my, my own voice, and kind of learn that, um, you know, I guess, how do I say this? Female power. To feel, to feel empowered, to speak up, even when I don't see, um, when I see something that like needs to be fixed, or see something that needs to be shared. That was really important for me. But I did not have a, Asian American, mentor until just about, I want to say 3 years ago, when I met one. And she was another, nonprofit, worked in the education and workforce development lane. Um, and just seeing how she commanded a room,
Mhm.
and was so vulnerable but strong, and how authentic she was in that space, a space where there was not a lot of folks that looked like us, was really empowering and inspiring to watch. And so I approached her, and not necessarily ask her to be a mentor, but I just asked her for coffee. And I was just like, I just want to kind of have a cup of coffee with you, if that's okay, or some tea. And so we sat and we chatted, and she just, her and we became really good friends very quickly. And, um, she shared a lot of the things that she learned in her life, which, was simple as like, don't burn bridges.
Mhm.
Continue to put yourself in uncomfortable spaces, but if you ever feel like are stretched too thin, or if it's too uncomfortable, like, it's okay to assert boundaries. um, I think that, um, growing up, being Vietnamese American and a female, my parents, and not faulting them at all, but we're kind of taught to be demure, quiet, obedient, and not assert yourself. And so, she really helped me learn how to just conduct myself in a boardroom, or at the table when I'm called upon. And something that she told me was, I had a lot of imposter syndrome that I was dealing with, because the growth was so fast, and I found myself in rooms I never thought I would ever be in. And she said, "You are meant to be there. Sit down and take your seat." And
Yeah,
that really, remembering those words really helps me snap out of it whenever I start to feel that kind of creep up again.
that's so powerful. I love that. I think a lot of times we forget that piece of it, like you got there, like, can you actually own it? Because so many of the women I'm working with are like, again, there's a lot of that similar cultural conditioning of obedience, demure, like don't speak up, don't make too much noise. And then if you do reach that point where you're like kind of in a top tier, then how do you own it? Which is really an interesting step. But I'm
Yeah.
actually curious for you then. So if like you weren't owning it as much when you were younger, what do you attribute your fast growth to? Is it just like being open to learning? Like what was it that made you be able to step into it even when you still had this imposter syndrome lurking? Because I think sometimes we think if I have imposter syndrome, I can't get there. And obviously you did get there. So what helped you get there? And then obviously she helped you with owning it.
Yeah, it's a long time ago, I told myself success was going to be my best revenge. um, Growing up, it was not easy being the one that was different in my school. I was bullied and teased a lot. I didn't have very many friends, and I'm also, biracial, and so I never felt like I was Vietnamese enough or American
Mm.
enough, and so I was left out of you know hangouts with friends. I was left out of group projects a lot, um, and I just felt like, okay, one day I'm going to um, I'm gonna do great things, and you're gonna wish that you were nice to me.
Yeah.
And so that kind of lit a fire in me because it's just, I saw the discrimination my parents dealt with as well. There would be people that would just hang up the phone on them. And I was like, okay, I'm going to study English, like, back and forth and upside down and everything in between. So I can just get really, really good at English. And so no one will like ever question me. Um, or tell me that they don't understand me. I was being misunderstood a lot, was really, really tough. Um, and then, just wanting to do a good job always. I wanted to, I told myself when I was going to get a, big girl job that I would do that job really well and I would be the best at that job. And then I would look at all the people that were doing a really good job in that same role, and I would, befriend them and I would learn from them, and I would have, my colleagues tell me what's working for them. Um, and then I started realizing like I was starting to teach that back down the line. Um, but it was also just engaging with folks in other departments and learning really quickly that we're all on the same team. Sometimes in the manufacturing space, there's like a divide between the manufacturing floor and the office. And so I tried to be that bridge between the two, and make sure that everybody knew like I was an ally, and so remain approachable, and trying to be helpful. Um, and just through that, I started to develop efficient processes and started, teaching that forward, and started catching the eyes of leadership that would just kind of continuously like place me forward, progress me forward.
Mm.
um, and yeah, I just, anybody that asks me is just do your job the best that you can do every day, and you know and teach, learn, teach, and repeat. That's all you can
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Okay, good. Well, thank you so much for sharing that because I think it's important for us to all be like, what is the journey? Because each journey is so individual. And then
Yeah.
tell me about how you got to where you are today, which is, running, like you focus very much on South King County. And for those of you all listening who are not in Seattle, right? It's just a particular region in Seattle, the southern part. I guess you focus on the county, right?
Yeah.
Like south
Yeah.
of the city. And so
Hmm.
how did you get to that place where you knew you wanted to do that? And I also like am very clear near to where Samantha works. And so I'm like, oh yeah, like it's such an essential area. But how did you bring your energy and focus to that region?
Yeah, so I mean, I took my first steps here in SeaTech, on American soil. My first steps were taken here. My first job was in Tequila. My mom's first salon was in Des Moines. My dad's first landscaping job was in Burien. Our first apartment was in Burien, and so everything was always like the Southside area. And then I was working at at a manufacturing facility in Tequila. There's a huge manufacturing valley, Tequila in Kent, and so I just kind of stayed around there in that area. And my my former place that I worked at, my former employer, had a membership with the Seattle Southside Chamber, and at the time it was COVID, and we started to get more and more involved. The chamber really provided a lot of essential resources to help businesses stay open, identify if they're essential or not, and how to navigate that really, intense, time that a lot of small businesses were facing. And I became more and more involved with the chamber, and my predecessor, um, so sorry, taking a step back here. I became more involved with the chamber, and I started to join committees. I was going to every single event. I just put myself out there to just continue to engage, and I was able to get a lot of folks to, purchase, products and services from us in our business. I then became an ambassador for the chamber, and helped my predecessor create one of a program that we still do today, um, that helps our outreach to small businesses and community members. And one day he called me and said he's leaving the chamber, and said he, was looking to see if I knew anyone in my network that would be interested in, working for him. And I was like, or for the chamber, and I was just like, well, what do you do now? And I knew the chamber threw on events, but I didn't know how much the chamber did. I actually never worked in a nonprofit. I was worked in the private sector. Um, and so, I just tossed out, well, would you be open to reviewing my resume? And he was like, I was really hoping you'd say that. And so I put in my resume. The CEO at the time, Andrea Ray, amazing woman. Um, she gave me a call later that afternoon. I interviewed a couple days later, and then I want to say like an hour after that, I got the offer. A week and a half after that, I started at the chamber and never looked back. And it was just, it's been a fantastic um, place, just full of opportunity, and full of heart in this work. I really enjoyed working. I really enjoy working for a nonprofit, helping people achieve their dreams or overcome obstacles. It's just, it's such an honor and a privilege to be here.
Well, what a beautiful story. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank
And
you.
it's so interesting, like you said, sometimes people are looking out for you, and definitely in that situation, like that helped you for sure. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes too, we, like for Asian Americans, we can be like, oh, we downplay stuff like that instead of stepping forward. And so I love how you're like, well, I just like stepped forward and went for it, which is like so powerful. And I'm curious then for you, like I remember you telling the story, and there may be different examples since then, but when I heard you speak about when people, kind of like when you step into your own power and you really step into your self worth, they can be really critical or jealous or say things that are challenging. And I'm curious if you have suggestions, because sometimes that's why we hold back, right? Like we're like, I'm not going to go forward
Yeah.
because then it might put me out there in a way that I don't want to hear those criticisms. And how do
Yeah.
you think about that kind of situation?
I just feel like, the risk is worth it to put yourself out there. And there's so much more support that I get than criticism. And, I've had to really um, learn that it's okay for people to have their own opinions, and even old friends that I used to have to not follow me into this next journey.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I just continue to just focus on the mission at hand, and, hold, stand firmly and strong on my values. And, I just keep taking, you know, a step at a time. It's really, it really does like shake you to your core. It's really hard. It doesn't take the sting away of what they say. But just learning really, through lots of therapy, I've learned, that those negative voices, maybe in my head that hold me back are all, it's not my voice. It's someone else's voice. It's other people's voice. And so I don't own those. And um, I'm just, yeah, I'm just not going to allow folks to kind of deter me or distract me from the work that needs to be done. Um, they can say whatever they want about me, or you or anyone else who steps into their power. Um, but you're going to continue to create beautiful things, and you're going to continue to fight for them. And one day they might turn around and you know um, ask you for a seat. And I've had that happen so much. Like I mentioned before, when I was younger, I had a lot of bullies, or in former workplaces, that corporate competition, and I I am now receiving a lot of emails or direct messages on LinkedIn or even on my Instagram from folks that I know, spoke ill of me or tried to sabotage my success, um, asking me for my time. And I get to make that choice whether I allow them in or not. But I just try to stand firm in my values and my mission, and um, just proceed forward. And it's a lot of noise to block out sometimes. But it's it, I don't know. One of my friends says to me, "If you don't have any haters, you're not doing anything." So you just got to keep going and not own it. A lot of the barriers. There was a woman I worked with. Her name was Cindy Derricott, at one of the manufacturing companies I worked at, and she said, "You're really good, and you're going to go really far." And at this time, I was just a customer service rep, and she was like, "You're really good. You're really smart. You're going to go really far." And I looked at her and I was like, "Why did you say that?" Like, that's really nice, and thank you for saying that. But she was like, "But I see that you have a lot of internal, like, barriers that you need to work through, and that's all internal work." And so once I started to have shift my perspective on it, it really helps me, just make it through the fog.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing you said reminded me of how I think about it too, which is when someone's being a hater or jealous or whatever they're doing, their goal is actually to distract you, right? So then they do win if you get distracted by it and you focus your energy and
Mhm.
attention on it. And I feel like, and I don't know, I guess if this is cultural as much, but I'm like a really loyal person. So when it's hard for me to release relationships and to move forward. And then I always have to remember, I'm like, well, if they're not supporting me to move forward, then that's not a relationship that's going to support my life. Right. And
Right.
somebody, yeah, like if they're a hater or saying whatever it is to you, that can be really challenging. But I think it's really hard because sometimes people don't want to rise exactly for that reason. They're like, I'm afraid of putting myself out there. I'm afraid of what might come.
Yeah.
And, I feel like it's like you said, the internal work of like, how do you get to be stronger in the relationship with yourself so that
Hmm.
whatever they're saying or whoever they are, like, doesn't affect you so deeply. And,
Yes.
but I do think that like that desire to please is very, I mean, generalized Asian, like, because you're supposed to be protecting your family and keeping them good. And so when someone's criticizing you, they're criticizing your family. And it can be difficult, I feel like, for Asian women to be like, oh, that's just going to happen sometimes. And how can I be powerful in myself? And I don't know if that's something that you think about it that way, or if you have anything else to add around that piece of it.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, being Asian American, and woman, you're just taught to be so soft spoken, to serve, um, and you're good if you listen, you don't talk back, you don't raise your tone, you don't lose your composure, and it's it's really it's really hard to, like, I guess, not want to appease your parents, um, and kind of go the other direction of what you're taught. And not that I'm being disrespectful in any way, but I can object without, I can object, I can have boundaries, I can assert myself and still be in my true, like, feminine power. Um, and I can speak my truth and be okay. Um, Being a recovering people pleaser, I just, for many years, put other people's needs in front of me. Um, and I had a realization years ago when I had emergency surgery and flatlined for several minutes. And when I came back to, um, I just realized, like, if I had lost my life in that point, I was not living my truth. I was not being authentic. I was doing work that I was good at, but didn't necessarily go home feeling fulfilled, like I made an impact. Um, I was just doing a lot of soul searching and realized that, like, I feel my best when I am helping people, but I also need to take care of myself when I'm doing that. And so it's been it's been a journey, but it's so empowering when you're able to reflect and you're able to kind of take good care of those around you and take care of yourself and find that balance.
What you were saying is so powerful and it's so helpful. I think sometimes when we do worry about what other people are thinking about us, like how to maintain and come back into our own power. And it's not an easy thing. Like it's something you have to really practice and work on. But I feel like the more you do it, then the more you can be like, oh, right, like I can do this in various situations or when it feels tough or when you're starting to rise up and people, the higher you go, people start to aim for you. And like that's what it sounded like happened for you, right? Like the more successful you got, the more people started to want to take you out or ask for your help,
Yeah.
is what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to figure out quickly who was a true friend and wanted my time and would respect my time versus those that wanted to, um, I guess, grasp at the opportunities around me.
Hmm.
Um, People that were opportunistic. Um, that was it. It's a sad reality, but not everyone's going to walk with you in this next phase of your life when you um, I mean, I guess in either direction. If you're going down, at my lowest, I lost a lot of friends. At my highest, I've also lost a lot of friends.
Yeah.
Um, and so, but I've gained new ones, and it created space for new connection and new relationships. And it's just you find a new sandbox to play in.
Well, I think sometimes we get stuck on the idea that like whoever we had when we were younger is like who we have forever. Instead of actually realizing as we evolve, we get to have new relationships and we get to step into different ones that are actually amazing. And like I feel like as an adult, once I realized that, I was like way more open to having more friends because I used to be like, well, I have the friends I have and they're good. And that's it. And I'm not going to like have more friends. Instead of
Mhm.
being like, oh, no, there's like new people for new circumstances, new situations. And then that's going to be really powerful and really cool.
Yeah.
Like yeah, and so that when we can just be like, oh, like it's I have plenty of time for new people, that's
Hmm.
actually a much like more interesting place to be than to be
Yeah.
like I only have the set group that I've always hung out with, you know. Just feel like it's an important conversation, right, in general for us to have because sometimes these fears can be very subconscious for people and they're
Hmm.
afraid that they're going to lose people or their family or whoever it is or their approval of people. And I find that breaking those patterns is so essential because when we don't change those patterns, like it doesn't allow us to expand and grow. And it's
Hmm.
something I'm always talking to my clients about. And I'm also like, we also get to have different relationships with our families and our parents. And even as you grow, like you'll get to shift that. And it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be how it was when you were a kid. It can be different. And, it can take some time. Like it's like, turning the Titanic sometimes to like shift your relationships with your family
Yeah.
into ways that feel really good to you. And it is possible. Like I've done it and many of my clients have done it as well. And so
Hmm.
I love just like having the conversation because I think, especially with Asian families, we learn to be so close to our family to take care of them that they're like the most important thing. And they are, but they're not more important than you. And so how can we be in our own power while also loving, loving them?
Right. I just had dinner with a friend who I worked with over 15 years ago, and she's doing amazing things and is designing these massive murals all over Pierce County, King County, and most people, they don't know who she is, but they will recognize her art.
Cool.
And she finds herself, in these like rooms of opportunities, but she also has a sense of like loneliness at the top where she had to let so many people go in her life who did not see her vision or would make her feel like she's bragging. And I absolutely identify with that. There were so many times where I would have conversations with folks that I grew up with, and you know, they would kind of make me feel bad about talking about like the good things that are happening in my life. It's like, oh, don't rub it in our faces or
Mm,
anything like that. Or, it would just, they would minimize the growth, or they would just not be there to celebrate with me. Um, and, you know, it just, it hurts, but it's also, I think I'm getting to an age where I just kind of don't care as much anymore. I'm just like, that's, one day we'll hang out again soon, but if not, it's fine. I wish you well. There's no
mm,
like ill feelings on my end, wishing them anything negative or anything. It's just more of like, I just don't want to be around that energy that like pulls you down. And you can feel it when you're having a conversation with someone who's envious,
yeah,
jealous, or has like a fixed mindset and they
yeah,
don't want to expand and grow. Um, and it's her and I were talking about it in great detail, just of the feeling that you would get walking away from those conversations. And then that's when you start to realize like this friendship is not doing me any justice. It's not serving me anymore.
yeah.
um, and to learn to just be okay with that. um, it's hard sometimes.
It
But
is hard, but I like how that we're having the conversation because I feel like it normalizes that that is the evolution as an adult, that
yeah,
we can have shifts and changes in relationships and we can let go of people. And especially if they aren't people who are for you, like that's how I always think of it. I'm like, is this person for me? Like, is this a person, if something amazing happened in my life, like I would text them and they would just only be like all the excited emojis, right? Or are they someone who'd be like, oh, that's good for you, like they're not actually
mhm,
excited for you. And so that's like one, there's many standards you can have, but that's how I always think. I'm like, is this person for me? And if they're not for me, why am I still spending time with them? Like, is this a
yeah,
relationship that's actually going to be worth it to me in the long
yeah,
run? Yeah.
yeah. And don't chase them. If it's not working, don't force it.
Right. Exactly. You can just be like, hey, it's okay to release that. Yeah, for
Hmm.
sure. Yeah, such
Absolutely.
well, and I love that, and this is so I love that we're having the conversation because I think it's not talked about enough.
Yeah,
That you do change and evolve, and then yeah, things happen, and people you evolve, your relationships evolve, and that's totally okay.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Amazing. Well, there's been so much rich conversation here. My last question for you is, you really focus on supporting local businesses, right? Is that and so what would you say for you, like what remains, like how does that help you, like what's the passion for you around supporting local businesses?
I think it just stems to my childhood, just remembering the times where I distinctly remember putting up my mom's nail salon sign
Mm,
and my mom letting me flip that open and close sign on like the first day of opening. um, Helping my dad, flyer through the summer with the whole family, my little brother and sister in tow, and just making it a fun thing. And then we would get Taco Bell at the end of the day, and that was like our treat. Taco Bell was like our treat, and I still love it. But it's to see the independence that my parents were able to get from that. They were able to build their generational wealth through entrepreneurship, and it stemmed from a dream. And what I saw my mom and my dad do as well was they didn't just like build, they helped and gave back and paid it forward by teaching new incoming Vietnamese immigrants and refugees in the community by coaching them, walking them through, how for my mom, how to be a manicurist, and then helping them build out their business plans so they can open their own salon. Um, and she continued to teach that. She didn't have a school, but she had such a big heart and just continued to give back and to see that, someone did that for my mom. My mom paid that forward, and it continues to create this sustainable ecosystem where you just again learn, you teach and repeat it, and it eliminates those barriers of access. And it's it really uplifts our community out of poverty and out of fighting for every day and being so reliant on assisted care.
mhm,
um, And it's really, my parents were able to then purchase their first home. They were able to take vacations and go back to Vietnam for the first time to visit family because we came here with no one. It was just my mom, my dad, and I, and my mom had more children. Um, and so it was just, it, it really is the heart of like what I do is my upbringing. It like locks me back into that little girl inside of me, who really just enjoyed that time of my life. And it was just some of the happiest memories I have. And so
mm,
to be able to sit, across the table from another entrepreneur who is, dreaming of wanting to bring their product forward, and me being able to provide that technical assistance and help them be their navigator, to see it go from concept and then they have a storefront, and then the chamber's doing a ribbon cutting for them. It just brings me right back to that. And so I'm constantly in this like um, just loop of joy through this work. And it's, there can be really challenging days because entrepreneurship has their, ebbs and flows. And sometimes I'm talking to a business and they're like, I am 2 weeks away from closing my doors. What do I do? Um, but I'm able to connect them to resources that they didn't even know existed. Um, and to, extend, that cutoff for them, that time, that, that ending of their dream, and to really to help them overcome that
Mm.
is just so fulfilling for me. And so it's not the businesses that I'm helping, it's people.
Yeah.
Because again, people are just at the heart of everything that we do. You don't create a product without thinking about the user. You don't create a service and you don't provide a service without thinking about, what problem it's solving for, the end, the your patient or your customer. Um, and I'm just happy to be a part of their journey.
Mm. I love that. Well, as a fellow entrepreneur, like I am so grateful that organizations like yours exist and that there is support out there, because it is interesting that it is such a, I thought going into entrepreneurship felt like very bold. And then when you're really in that world, I know a lot of entrepreneurs and it's still a very minor part of like what, like when you're just hanging out in social groups and stuff, like it's
Yeah.
rare. It's still rare. And so I appreciate what you do and I love the stories that you're telling about it, because I love to frequent local businesses too, and like that you're supporting them in all of those different ways and then also being an entrepreneur. It's
Thank
pretty
you.
cool.
Thank you.
Well, Samantha, thank you so much for all of this. It's time for our fast action questions. Are you up for it?
I'm up for it. Let's
Okay,
go.
awesome. All right. What was the last thing you watched on television?
90 Day Fiance.
Okay, perfect. I love it. We always find out how people are decompressing at night with that question. Okay,
It's
and
so
then next question.
good.
Yeah, I know. And then what is on your nightstand?
Um, a candle, a battery charger, another charger, and the remote to my fan. It's
Oh,
hot.
yeah, love it. Awesome. Okay, and then when is the last time you tried something new and what was it?
Um, Something that comes to mind is zip lining. I went to
Oh, that's
Whistler at the end of the summer last year, and I ziplined for the first time in my life. Um, so terrified, but it was beautiful. Like out of the terror of zipping down a mountainside, I, got the courage to open my eyes and just kind of take things in. So I went from screaming on top of my lungs, cussing, to like, oh wow, this is beautiful, and then back to screaming.
I've actually only ziplined once, and it was also in Whistler, so it's probably in the same ones, and it
Yeah,
is,
yeah,
like, terrifying. Like, you're "I'm going that way on what?" Yeah.
yeah.
And then
It's
it's also so
so
cool.
yeah, it's so fast, and I didn't expect it to be like a 5 hour experience.
Yeah.
I thought it was like a slide. You just go
You just,
up
like,
and then
go
you go
down.
down. But
They're
it
like,
was a
"Oh,
whole
no. We've
excursion.
got you for a while." Yeah, you're like, "Okay."
Yeah.
Um, that's so funny. Okay, and then the last one is, what are your top 3 most used emojis?
The heart hands emoji, um, like the like rolling laughing emoji,
Mhm.
um, and then the sparkles emoji, the one with the three little yellow sparkles.
Yeah, I love that one too.
Yeah.
Oh, so fun. Well, Samantha, it was such a joy to have you on the School of Self Worth. Thank you so much for being here. And then for all of you interested in the work that she's doing, we're going to link everything below. So check that out. And then just thank you for being so generous and open with your sharing about your experience and your journey. And I know that people listening are benefiting so much from what you had to say. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Nicole. I appreciate your time.